Fine. Let's look for other questions.
أمين حمادي السفير. رح أسأل بالعربي مش غلط يعني.
لا أبدا تفضل.
سؤالي لأستاذ محمد مراد، حسب ما فهمت لما حكي عن الاستراتيجية الجديدة بالماركتينج بالتسويق، اللي فهمته منك إنه أنت عم تعتمد على سلوك المستخدم عندك وبترجع تحلله وتحوله لداتا تعرضها على الزبون تبعك لتقدر تجيب منه الإعلان. هذا اللي فهمته أنا من كلامك. بدي تصحيح أو إذا معي حق، خصوصي إنه أسانج بكتابه الجديد سايبر بانك قال إنه جوجل بتعرف عن الشخص أكثر من والدته. اللي قاصد فيه إنه قديش وصلت درجة انتهاك الخصوصية. بدي أفهم بجوجل وين الحد بين الحرية وبين الخصوصية تبع المستخدم. ميرسي.
So I'll answer in English. Excellent, very valid question actually, and there's a very big distinction between customer or user information and personally identifiable user information. So what we usually do is we aggregate data. First of all, we don't sell data to anyone, so we keep our data to ourselves. There's a very few people at Google who actually get access to personally identifiable information, which means information of this person with the name next to it. And obviously, I don't have such access. Nobody has such access. It's very select engineers who, yeah. But we aggregate a lot of data based on its cookie data. So if you use a browser, just to make it simple, if you use a browser and you visit a site, this site puts a cookie on your browser so that when you come back, it knows that you are the person that visited before. They don't know your name, they don't know your age, they don't know anything. And when you place advertising, it's really based on these cookies. And it's based on millions and millions of these cookies that, by the way, no one cares to know your name. They just want to know that you're interested in a car, okay? To put the car ad in front of you. Actually, there's more technologies that if you came and bought something online, they want to go and target you again when you're reading newspapers to buy again. Okay, it's called remarketing. But they don't know your name. They don't care, to be honest. Okay, and now there is access to personally identifiable information. I think the previous panel spoke about this. Is that when there's a criminal situation, if somebody searched to buy a bomb and then bombed something, and then there's a court order to investigate this, then that's a completely separate process. It doesn't have to do anything with advertising, and it doesn't go to me or the commercial side of the business. It's more about any other, it's like any other investigation that happens offline as well.
They went on the internet to know everything about me. Google has nothing to do with giving these informations.
No, so usually when they do these investigations, they go to anyone who has access to this information. It could be Google, it could be Facebook, but then it has to go through the normal jurisdiction. Because let me explain the problem. The problem for Google is that if we make Google not trustworthy, people will go away. Our CEO always says competition is one click away. Okay, we don't hold anyone. If they come, they don't like the search results on Google, they'll go to Bing, okay, or they'll go somewhere else. If they think that Google is using their information to sell it for bad reasons, they will go away. We don't hold them in any way, okay? So that's why we're extremely careful about this. And obviously the media likes to talk about these things, but we're extremely careful and we don't play around with user data.
How much time do we have, May? We have a question.
Then we go for lunch.
Okay, we have a question from the audience in here. It says, why does traditional media view social media as the devil's work? Well, I mean, I want to put this question in another way to Muhammad Murad again. If traditional media cannot survive and they die, and there is no professional content anymore on the internet, how will you survive yourselves? And how much of your content is professional media, and how much of your content is just user-generated content? And
I want to tell you something.
Yes, okay,
Something happened in the last week. There were two tweets. One, that the King of Saudi Arabia died, that he is clinically dead. And the tweet went out and it spread quite a lot. And there was a tweet 2 days ago that Prince Faisal, the brother of King of Abdullah of Jordan, was assassinated. Both stories were false, by the way. And, but for me as a journalist living in Jordan, it's created havoc for me. And I'm a defender of social media, I'm not against it. But those people who wrote the tweets, I don't know who they are, were not responsible for what they wrote. And that is a very, very big problem. Now, a few years ago, I'll take you back, CBS did a story about something called Memogate, which was a story about George Bush and how they faked his military records or something. And somebody found out that the documents that CBS used in that incident were actually not real. Lots of people lost their jobs for this. Lots of people, including, Dan Rather. Towards the end, he had to resign because of that story. Meanwhile, the two tweeters who did this thing last week are still tweeting somewhere. And yes, that's the devil in the works. But if they are there, we can't ignore them. And sometimes actually they are a useful source of information. Like for example, when the raid happened on the Bin Laden compound in Pakistan, the first time we all heard about it was one of the neighbors tweeted. So it's a two-way street. You have to play with it. But for me, it's a big headache. I mean, honestly, like last week, they called me up. Oh, the King of Saudi Arabia died. Like, I don't know. I mean, is he dead? How would I know? Oh, it's on Twitter. Like, how do you know that?
Mohammed, do you want to comment on this issue of? I have Jonas in here who has just tweeted saying that there should be.
I have.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Najwa Namour, graphic designer. Just following up on the remark made by the journalist from Al Jamhuriya, I want to ask Mr. Malik. You spoke about the challenges the print media is facing, and spoke about the Newsweek. Despite of the risk of dooming financially, if we look at it from a different angle, don't you think that social media actually revived the print media? Because especially it made it closer to the new generation who is now more exposed to the news than before.
Good question.
Okay. At the end of the day, print media, like any other business, has to survive, and it has to make money. Otherwise, we're facing a big problem in the Arab world from years. Young people, it's a matter of habit also. People in my generation, if you went into university without holding a newspaper, okay, you were considered. Today, the Daily Star, for example, in the 1970s, used to sell something like 15% of their newspaper, of our newspapers, on AUB Street. Now, they don't sell newspapers on AUB Street. You don't have a shop, okay? So, yes, in a sense, the young people are looking more at the news because it's available in front of them. But we haven't found the million-dollar question. How do we make enough money for us to continue? Of course.
Make the online presence.
Okay,
you said it's a game changer. So
it's a game changer. It's a product changer too. I mean, you cannot. I can't envisage in 20 or 25 years. I mean, I'm being really here, very optimistic. Okay, in the Arab world, I don't envisage having print media anymore because you will have it on a tablet.
But would that be a big deal?
Sorry?
Would that be a big problem?
Of course, it's a big problem.
Your brand would be present online, so...
Yes, but the problem is, which is really where Bassam here was hitting on Murad, is you're making all the money, we're not. You're sending us all these...
No, I was not hitting. I was putting a question
insinuating at the beginning.
That was not me.
Do you agree, Murad? Do you agree, Murad?
We're not enemies.
Basically, you're providing the content. They have found a way of telling you, well, we're bringing you traffic, okay? They have found a way of how to make, because of the magnitude of their company and the service they provide. Of course, I'm not saying no. I'm saying this is a challenge that we're going to have to face. It opens opportunities in many places, but it's not an easy challenge. And if it succeeds, we'll be very happy. But it might not. But we have to realize.
Fine, let's have one last question from Ghassan from the audience. Yes.
Just to close the discussion on one very important topic, since you're all in the business of media in one way or another, you all know that everything that you work on is driven and funded by cash and money. Investments are going into the new media, valuations are extremely high, and it's a battle of supremacy, as the title of this panel is. Supremacy over the mass users and the eyeballs of people in order for you to generate the cash required to run your business. How much is, in your view now, traditional media under pressure to generate that cash, not necessarily from advertising, but from funding sources, which would turn it into more of a guided tool as compared to social media, which is a free tool of communication and news? And how hungry is traditional media for that kind of sponsorship? And how bad is that going to be on its credibility going forward in the future?
Social media.
Of the traditional media by looking at funding sources and therefore being effectively steered by its sponsors.
Well, I mean, I can talk about a little bit what happened in the United States. I mean, most of the local newspapers in the United States were killed, not by social media, they were killed by Craigslist actually, because they took the classified ads from them. And they were a major source of information. I mean, those little newspapers in small town America were actually very good newspapers for local news. And they were just wiped out because, all the classified went out of them. And then I think, the big news organizations now, especially in the United States, realized that they have to do something about it. So what they did, they went and started buying, these little websites. For example, the New York Times bought TV Newser, which was a blog about, media in the United States. They bought a website for a guy called Nate Silver, who blogs about the election results. So, and now we can also see it in the Arab world, like all the traditional media in the Arab world, like Al Jazeera now, they have Jazeera Talk, or there is iReport on CNN, and the BBC has something called Ana Shahid. So people are moving towards that, and those people have more resources than, some Muhammad or Tom, Dick, or Harry sitting somewhere tweeting. At the end of the day, I think they will win. I don't think that the traditional media is under any threat, by the way.
Okay, I'm glad you feel like that, but I think on the ground this is not the case, unfortunately. I mean,
no, I can tell you one thing. In Jordan we had riots last week. I know you heard about it. The Queen of Jordan had 2.4 million followers on Twitter. Where are they?
Let me tell you, in the Gulf and in Jordan, you are lucky to have a healthy advertising environment that is still funding the traditional media, but this is not true elsewhere in the world and in Lebanon. So here, elsewhere in the world, traditional media and here are crying. And as Ghassan was saying, funding for traditional media comes from advertising. I doubt that traditional media can have any type of other funding from investors unless they are benevolent investors wanting to.
It won't happen, what you're saying.
I think
To conclude,
Malik and everybody else is hungry.
exactly. Well, I won't conclude. Basically, social media is here to stay. Traditional media is here to stay. We wish traditional media all the best to survive. And I hope social media will help traditional media survive. Thank you.